discussed. So you never kind of feel that you're out of the game. We know we can score goals. We've got enough skill, and we didn't feel that we were behind the game. And so a pretty positive bench, pretty workmanlike actually today. We just kind of kept chipping away at it.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul. Tonight's game, based on your answer, may not apply, but in so many of these games where your team has fought their way back into games, I'll always hear them say, it took us a while to get to our game. But I'm wondering how often is it that you're playing these teams and improving on the forecheck as the game goes on? How much is it that you either you are making adjustments or your team is maybe figuring the other team out throughout the game, and that they're very good at that?
I don't think anything. Maybe I think 80 to 90% of the adjustments that we talk about are back to form. So they're not, hey, we're playing our game and we'll make a couple of adjustments in terms of changing what we do for the better. I think the idea of what they're really good at, we saw in the first period. Their transition game is outstanding. They caught us on a change and again on a turnover. Right, they're really really good at that, and that didn't change throughout the game. If you feed them, they're going to come back at you, and they did when we made those. So we had less of it as we went forward. But I don't. It seems like this year, you're not going to come out, play your game, and dominate a team for 60 minutes. So you've got to stay in the fight when it's not going your way. You've got to keep pressing in the right ways and not open the game up. So you walk into the locker room after the first period and Mark Scheifele's saying we don't need to score 2 goals on the first shift. That's the right mentality in the room, right? So they've already got it figured out. We have a bit of a history now of coming back in games, but I don't feel tonight was an example of we had a terrible first period and then we got to our game. I think it was a solid and even first period. And if you go back and it's kind of the Paul Friesen's question from this afternoon, it didn't look like a lot of the other Montreal games that we played, and we're happy with that because we haven't really liked the way we've played against Montreal.
We'll go next to Scott Billick from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Paul, how would you categorize your team right now? I think it's 8 games now where you've left the first period down a goal. I don't want to say lucky for you guys because you're 12-6.
I wouldn't. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not. But just trying to, how would you categorize your team based on the fact that you are coming back in a lot of games but are winning those games?
Yeah, and coming back, I don't think we've had a lot of comebacks where we thought we came back, we won, and we got lucky in them. I think we've been solid in the comeback, and we've also had a bunch of tough games late, right? We've lost some games right at the tail end of that game. So I think a part of this is we're not a real young team anymore, right? We're not an old team, but we've got a little bit of maturity on the bench now where they assessed that game well in between the first and second period. The players understood what had happened in the first. So there's some maturity there. There's an understanding. Okay, we got to clean up these 2 or 3 things, but we're right in what we're doing. So there's I don't know if patience, because I hate using that word in the game of hockey, but there's certainly a calm in some ways to where we're at. I would say maybe we're good, have been really good in the first handful of games here at assessing where we're at in the game.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Gregor. Thanks, Paul. Paul, can you give us any insight into Nikolai Ehlers and Corey Perry there? Was there something that happened that led up to that, or where did that sort of come from?
I think just a bump at the line, and they kind of came back together again and decided it was time, right? There's lots of emotion in their room, and it's late in the game. Nicky's been, I think, in 3 now that I can remember, maybe 4, and he doesn't pick on small guys. So he's got some fight to him.
We'll go next to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Paul, was that one of the more decisive games you've seen from Sami Niku in terms of his decision making and decisiveness?
So I thought what he did well was he showed what he's good at. So he made a lot of really clean plays around the back of the net on the tape. He's a puck mover. So what he did tonight well was kind of showed you what he's good at. So, and credit to him, because it's not easy to do what he did as a puck mover, to be out as long as he is and come in and have the confidence to make those plays. And on the transition goal for one, but a bunch of nice little plays around the net. I think it's much easier for a hitter to come into the game. You know, if he's been out a long time, just go out, finish a bunch of checks. But for a puck mover, that was a challenge for him, and I was pleased with his game. He was good.
We'll go next to Drew Mindell from the Illegal Curve. Go ahead, Drew.
Hi, Paul. What does it do for the team when a guy like Nate Thompson comes in, does all the little things and he gets that game-winning goal in tonight's effort?
Well, that's the biggest, right? The biggest reaction on the bench is when a guy like that scores, and it's his old team, and it ends up being the game winner, and you've clawed your way back. It does a lot, but I'm hoping it, and I think it's true, it does more for Nate, right? When you block shots for a living, when your lot in life is that you got to do all the hard, heavy things, it's good not just to score, but to score the big goal, to be a part of it, to feel like you were a decider, and it's not just the coach saying, "Hey, our penalty kill was great tonight," or that fourth line really, battled hard, score the big game-winning goal, and he's earned it. He's worked hard, and he's been a good part of the structure of our group.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Paul. Blake Wheeler seemed to earn every single point he got tonight, including that last one where you're up by 2 goals, and I think he's the one that shot the puck, and then he beats out the icing and feeds it in front. What did you see from your captain tonight?
He's had back-to-back games like that, right? So either some really fine finesse on plays where he can make plays, and then I think, I know Blake's starting for his foot forward is a power forward, right? It's heavy on the forecheck, it's physical, and then he has this great set of hands. And I think he had a great mixture of that tonight. I thought you saw both, right? Strong on pucks, finishing checks, that power forward, and at the end also some pretty fine plays. And I thought those guys weren't very far off, maybe 2 or 3 more. That's kind of I think what we're gonna see from that line. That there'll be nights where they don't get a lot to go for them, but even on big nights, you think, geez, they could have had even more. So pleased with the way that went.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. I'm kind of returning almost to the theme of some of those earlier questions with the comeback from down 3-1. Just in terms, I guess we're all a little perplexed. How do we classify this? Are you guys a good team that just has to deal with those kind of moments where you get caught? Is this the reality of roster construction or the division at large? How do we make sense of the dramatic part of the comeback win with the goals that you gave up and then the comeback after?
Yeah. So this is where you have to be careful of how you assess a team, right? So if you're good enough to come back, why don't you just start that way, and then you'll win every game? I find this division there's enough skill on all the teams that you can play a right period like we did in the first period here and be down 2. And I also felt that we haven't had to add a tremendous amount of risk to our game to claw back into these games, right? So we don't have 4 guys up. We're not cheating the game. We're not hanging guys. We're not high. We're not stretching guys. We're not blowing the zone or cheating. And then we get lucky and you come back in a game and you think you've done something great. I think we've stayed actually more true to form in all of these comebacks. This is just a function of the NHL that we're in right now. So the bench is right when we're down. Like they understand what's happened. We haven't had a lot of games, maybe where we're up early. I don't think that's going to change. I think you're going to get into games and the other team's going to push back. Like the 1-0 game in Van, from the 30-minute mark on, they pushed really hard. It's got some great saves, and we're able to win that game. I almost liked our 2-0 comeback in the quality of our play more than you score first and you hang on to it. So I'm not looking for the moment where we just kind of get our game together and then we're up by 2 and then 4, then 6, and that's just right because we're that good. That's foolishness. We're scratching and clawing in all of these games, and we have a little bit more maturity in our lineup now. We're a little bit older, so we can handle some of the emotions of being down 2-0 early.
And final question to Scott Billick from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
And I'm kind of building off that and the question I asked you earlier. But yeah, and you talk about maturity. It's that, I suppose, but there's also the skill, the talent in this team to make it happen, because it's not like there's a mentality here and then like the physical aspect, I assume, of actually scoring the goal or whatever that is. Can you kind of just explain that a little bit?
Right. And that's not we're on that kind of run this year. So I've got a bunch of guys that have scored big points year over year. So there is part of what you're talking about, really true, is there is a confidence that we can score goals. That it's not like they don't have a 2-year history here where you get down 1 and you're in real trouble. You get down 2 and it's over. We never come back. There's enough guys that know that we can light a team up in a period if they let us, right? And if not, we can still scratch and claw and score an awful lot of goals. So there's a confidence, an underlying offensive confidence that a 2-goal deficit isn't a death knell for the game. We're going to generate enough in games that we'll be able to get back into it.
Thanks very much, Coach. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back with you following practice tomorrow. Have a good night.